السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته. ازيك يا دكتورة سارة؟
الحمد لله. ازي حضرتك؟ اخبارك يا مستر
الحمد لله رب
محمد؟
العالمين. الحمد لله.
Thanks for inviting me to this session, first of all, for sure, and thanks for all of the participants over here. Hopefully that they can hear us. كده نتأكد سامعيننا كويس. I just need to share my screen as well. So guys, are you there? You can hear us. Ready, super ready for the class. Yes. Muhammad Faz is telling yes. Yeah, thank you for your confirmation. Yes. And how about others? Are you all ready, guys, for the class? Yes. Hello, hello, yes. Happy to see you all over here. Hopefully that, inshallah, you will benefit out of the class or the session. So, okay. So let's get started, guys, because you know our class is for only 25 minutes, so it's pretty short. So I just need to start directly. Did you wish to tell something at the beginning, Mr. Muhammad, or something?
No, go on. It's all yours.
Oh, okay. Thank you so much. So let's get started. Just for you to know about some speaking tips for IELTS, and then at the end of the class, I will let you ask questions for sure. So if you have any questions, just keep it as a note in your notebook. Then at the end of the class, I will let you ask questions, then I will answer all of your questions at the end, inshallah, bismillah. And for sure, if you have something to comment on or to participate, then leave your message in the chat box for sure on your right hand. So, speaking tips for IELTS. First of all, before letting you know about some tips related to the IELTS exam, let me just tell you about the test format or how the exam looks like right at the beginning for those who have never seen the IELTS exam before. So let me tell all of you how the exam looks like. First, actually the exam is just for only 15 minutes. Imagine like it's simply a one-to-one interview similar to this. And you need simply to answer all the questions that the examiner is asking you, and you need to expand your answer. I'll let you know about a lot of tips. But for now, know that it involves 3 parts. Part number 1, the examiner will ask you some general questions about your work, your hometown, about also maybe your favorite color, about parks, about laughing, just general questions. And you need to answer them directly. Every time you get a question, then you need to answer. That's part number 1. Then after part number 1, comes part number 2, in which you're supposed to have 1 minute to take notes. Can you see? You see it? Something like that. Talk about an important journey that was delayed for some reasons. That's the topic. And you have simply some questions below that, and you need to take notes about that topic quickly for only 1 minute, and then you're supposed to talk for 2 minutes about that topic. So it's like a long turn compared to part 1. In part 1, just a set of questions, and every question you get, you have to answer directly. But for here, no, you're supposed to talk continuously for 2 minutes, and nobody is interrupting you, right? You have to show off your language, right? Showing to the examiner that you're able to talk for a long time, right? For that 2 minutes. And then at the end comes part 3. Part 3 somehow detail the questions you will get. Somehow related to part number 2. I mean, if part number 2 about, let's say, describe a journey that was delayed. So part number 3 is just gonna be about traveling in general. What do you think of traveling? Do you like traveling? what are the advantages maybe and disadvantages, just general questions. You need to answer them directly. And if part number 3, let's say about a teacher, describe a teacher. So part number 3 is just gonna be about teaching, right? Do you have any suggestions, let's say, to improve the teaching, whatever curriculum, or just any detailed questions, and you need to answer them every time, like between 4 to 5 questions. Or maybe more for part number 3, maybe more if you are giving a short answer. Sometimes the examiner does add some more questions because he's not able to decide what your score is. But usually if you are talking too much, so most likely part number 3 has just around 5 questions or something. Um, Okay, so after knowing how the exam looks like, okay, what we have to do, what exactly the tips and tricks that can help us do better in the exam, score higher, because here you are evaluated out of 9, right? And most people do need 7, especially for those who are willing to immigrate. They need 8 777, 8 in listening, and then 7 in reading, 7 in speaking, and 7 in writing as well. And some are willing only to get 6 in speaking, especially for those who are like in need of completing their studies at their own country. They don't need to immigrate or something, but they need to complete their own studies to take um, so they don't need that high score of getting 8 777. So no matter what your purpose is or what your required score is, the same rules that you have to learn to be able to get a high score as high as possible, right? Because I believe even if you are willing to get only 6 or only 5, some, but just few, I can tell, few do need 5. But even if you need 5, I believe that you need to dream big, right? You need to do your best to get as high score as possible. So how this can be done? For sure, that can be done for sure by knowing some tips and tricks, and then after knowing such tips and tricks, you have to practice, because your speaking level is not gonna be improved definitely without practicing, without talking and speaking regularly, right? Speaking regularly, maybe with a teacher to evaluate you and to let you know about your weaknesses and strengths. Or even if you don't have this opportunity of having a teacher to guide you or something because of being busy or for whatever the reason is, you can even get a partner, get a speaking partner. Can be your friend, can be somebody who's willing to go for an IELTS exam as well. Why not, right? You will find many, by the way. These days you can find many groups on Facebook and many over there who are willing to immigrate and to take IELTS and so on. So I guess you can find one who's interested like you in taking IELTS and in getting a high score, and you can practice together, right? You can have some questions. If you Google, there are many books for sure. I can recommend you some, but even if you don't want books, and if you Google even only writing something like or searching for IELTS speaking questions, you will find many. So get such questions and start to train yourself on, especially the recent exams, because they are repetitive, by the way. It's so common to get the same questions again and again in the speaking exam, especially speaking. So you can simply start to practice with your partner, with that person. Maybe you can ask your friend some questions, then that person can answer you, and then you can exchange rules, right? To discuss, let's say, some topics until you get more ideas for the IELTS speaking topics, and until you somehow improve your fluency, right? But without memorization, please, okay? Yes, you have to prepare yourself for IELTS questions by getting some questions and start to like elaborate and speak more about such topics until you become ready for the test, being able to talk about all the topics, including let's say your hometown, and talking about colors, museum, many topics that are recent, you can simply start like only practicing, right? Training yourself on being better, on expanding your answer, on being ready with like some ideas at least, because it's not a good idea to go for the test, getting a question about a movie, like tell me about your favorite movie, and then you start telling to the examiner, I don't know about that, or I haven't seen any movie, or I have nothing to tell about movie. That's not okay. Definitely, you need to be ready with at least some ideas, but not with memorizing. And what I mean by memorization, I mean when you start looking for answers and then starting to like write some answers on a paper, then starting to memorize the answers as they are, to go for the test, to start telling them to the examiner, because the examiner is so intelligent, can simply know that you have memorized answers before coming, right? The examiner, from the tone of the voice, for sure, right? If you are talking, telling my favorite movie is Black Honey, right? If you know that, I love that movie for Ahmed Helmi, right? So if you just tell like this, I love this movie. It is a great one, mainly because no, if you just talk like that, this means that you have what we call it a robotic tone, or you are a person who has just memorized answers before coming to the test room. But when you talk naturally, spontaneously, right, fluently as well, so that tune is not going to be there, I believe. So just remember to practice, not memorize, okay? So back again to the main tips and tricks that are needed for you to learn, right? Number one is to expand your answer. Try to make your answer longer, guys. If you, for example, get a question about what's your favorite hobby in part number one, let's say, what's your favorite hobby? Never answer with only one word, like never did reading. That's a very short answer. You need to make it longer, right? Expand, I mean, make it longer. Elaborate on your answer. So when you tell reading is my favorite hobby, or is the one that I'm really interested in, you can add more. Maybe you can tell what exactly which books, let's say you like to read. I love to read, let's say maybe a religious books, and I usually read before bed, so you add, okay? And I'm not that kind of a person who maybe loves to buy books. I usually download some PDFs on the internet, then I start to read them like that. Your answer is supposed to be a longer response, right? So number one technique that can help you to expand your answer or make it longer is by adding reasons. I believe when you tell because, when you give a reason for what you're telling, somehow you make it longer. Like when you tell me, I'm interested in reading because, give me a reason. Because let's say it keeps me updated, let's say, with what's going on around the world, or uh, it what broadens my horizons, whatever. Give it more, right? Like what Muhammad Chokri is telling in the chat box, give the idea, explain it. You have to explain it. You need to give like a reason for that one. Maybe you can even give a contrasting idea. Why not? I guess this can also help to make it longer. A contrasting idea, I mean telling, I love this, okay, because of whatever the reason is. Then you can tell me, however, you can give me an opposite idea. Like maybe you can tell me, however, I'm not always in love of reading. Sometimes I feel bored out of reading, or tired, especially if I have a hectic working day. It's hard for me to read before bed. I just prefer to maybe watch a movie before bed at that moment. So this is what we call a contrasting idea, is when you give something and then you tell me, however, or on the other hand, or telling me an opposite point. Or maybe you can think of giving a past comparison. right? This can be done. You can simply tell a past in comparison. I mean, you can tell me what you're uh, interested in these days. Then how about in the past? Like you do tell me that my favorite hobby is reading. I love it a lot, and I do read throughout or during all my free time, or whenever I get free time, I start to read. Then you tell me, however, in the past, that was not the case. Okay, I was not that much into reading. I was simply maybe playing games, video games, or whatever. So because I was younger, I was not that much aware of the importance of reading. So I was not reading that much. So you tell me about your current situation and the past one when you were younger. Let's say, how was the case? Or giving examples, right? Why not adding examples, telling examples, or even telling a story? Giving examples, I mean, you tell, for example, so and so. You add, I mean, when you tell something like it keeps people, let's say, knowing all what's going on all over the world, then you can tell, for example, if you need to know any details or news about the coronavirus, let's say, or whatever, you can easily read a newspaper or an article on the internet for you to know all the details. So this is an example of telling a specific example related to the topic that you're talking about, right? Or using frequency, I mean here frequency words. Frequency words like usually, such words, often, sometimes. Such words can help you somehow to give more than one answer. So your answer at the end of the day becomes longer. When you, like when I ask a question, how often do you do that? Let's say, how often do you read? Then you start telling me that you read maybe 2 times a week. So I can tell that I often read, but that's not always the case. I sometimes tend to do something else, which is maybe playing. Playing basketball because it's my favorite sport, let's say. So you give an answer using I often do so and so, you explain, and then you tell, however, this is not always the case. Sometimes I tend to do something else. So when you use more than one frequency word, you make it longer, right? Yes, yes, exactly as Zainab is telling, adverbs of frequency. Yes, exactly. These are the words that can help you somehow to give more than one answer, for sure. And uh, and also, Muhammad is telling about the idea that when you practice one topic more than once, so you start to memorize it or something. You know, I you start to memorize it, but you have to be natural in the exam. Try to pretend, even if you have talked about this topic before with your partner. Try to show to the examiner your tone of voice by like raising your voice at some point, lower it at another, and try to never ever write while practicing with your partner. Like no need to write paragraphs. Maybe you can write bullet points just to remind you. Like if I get a topic about a movie, then I'll talk about that movie. If I get a topic about, let's say, a book, so that's the book that I'm interested in talking about. So you start like, thinking of giving like bullet points or ideas, but without writing paragraphs and so on. Okay, that's a comment, guys, on one question over there in the chat box. Okay, so back again to the point. After expanding your answer, or after knowing expanding your answer, and know, guys, that elaborating can be done in more than one way. As you can see, that's a list. So shall you do all of these together? No, for sure, no. Like, choose the one that suits you. When you get a question, think. You need to make it longer by adding a reason, or by giving a contrasting idea, or by what, right? Choose any, depending on your topic, right, and on your ideas as well. So I guess that tip can help you a lot whenever you need to expand your answer, especially in part number one. I can um, consider it important for part number one, but for part number three as well can help the idea of expanding your answer, because sometimes you get a question and you need to make it longer. And how about uh, whenever getting a question, like when I tell you what are the characteristics of a good teacher, how would be your response? Like, shall you tell something like the teacher or every teacher should have some good characteristics like so and so? No. Like, don't try to repeat exactly the same words in the question of the examiner. Like, try your best to like paraphrase, we call it. Change the words of the question in other words as much as you can, just to show to the examiner what, simply to show your vocabulary level, right? If you are repeating exactly the same words of the question, then I will feel like you're repeating, right? You're not having a variety of vocabulary. So what do you think, guys? How we can paraphrase the word characteristics? Like, what are the characteristics of a good teacher? So at that moment, I will tell, well, a good teacher or an effective teacher, I believe, uh, needs definitely to have somewhat. Can I tell? Like, I don't want to repeat characteristics. I can tell. Yes, exactly as you told in the chat box. Needs to have some qualities. Yes, exactly. Qualities can be perfect synonym for that word. So some qualities, some skills. Yes, exactly. And you start elaborating, telling, let's say, needs to be definitely punctual, needs to be on time, right? Eh, then you add, right? You add, let's say, one more quality with an explanation for that quality and so on. So you start always try to paraphrase what the examiner is asking you about. And one more thing, number three here, you have to reflect the grammar of the question, at least at the beginning of your speech. I mean, when you get a question in the past, so you need to answer the examiner in the past as well, please. The same tense. And then if you wish to change the tense later on within your speech, okay, no issues, but at least show to the examiner that you are aware of the tense of the question itself. That's important. So when I ask a question like, how long have you been learning English? So I'm asking you simply in the present perfect continuous. So you need to answer me in the sentence, please. So you can tell me something like, I've been studying English for until, let's say, 35 years. And then after reflecting or using the same tense of the question, you can simply start to give any other tense if you wish, no problem. You can start telling something like, I started learning in my, let's say, kindergarten stage. Then even these days, I'm still learning, because learning is a continuous process, maybe you can tell. So you give one tense and then, or reflect at least the tense of the question. And then if you wish to add any other tense, past, continuous, so it depends on what exactly you're willing to tell, right? It's up to you, but at least it's so important to show to the examiner your awareness, because simply when the examiner does ask you, or the assessor does ask you a question in the past or in the present or in any tense, usually that assessor is expecting you or waiting you to use this tense, like checking you're able to use that tense or you have a problem with that tense, right? So remember that, please, guys. And also, you can learn some digression points. I believe you have to digress, especially if you are running out of ideas. It happens, right? Especially it happens, I often see it in part number two, sorry, for the long term. When I start asking a student or a candidate, like let's say the one that I showed you a minute ago regarding, let's say, a journey that was delayed. Then after telling a topic, that candidate simply and the answer to the extent of being 2 minutes. simply talks for only like 1 minute.
Okay, so sorry for that. I think we got lost the connection with Miss Sarah, waiting for her to rejoin again. Sorry for that, guys. By you, tell Miss Sarah got connected again. I'm going to upload the certificate of the webinar in the chat box so that you can download it.
Hello, Mr. Muhammad.
Hello. So here is the certificate in the chat box. Feel free to download it.
Hello, Mr. Muhammad. Do you hear me?
Yes, I'm hearing you well.
Yes.
So we got lost in the connection with Mrs. Sarah.
So let me think if there any other person who have the idea about IELTS. I have seen that there is someone who is asking about the IELTS fillers. Does anyone have any knowledge about the IELTS fillers?
Yes, Miss
Yes.
Sarah came back.
Yes, Mr. I came back. Yes.
Wait a minute.
Yes, I'm back. I'm sorry. I just pressed something by mistake.
Okay.
Okay. So I was talking about digressing. Okay, so in the remaining, only give me 5 minutes to describe that, and I will be all ears to listen to all your questions. So listen, I was talking about digression points, the point that you have to simply do is to digress whenever you get stuck. Okay, so if you get a question about describe a teacher in, especially in part 2, the one that is so long, you're supposed to talk for 2 minutes, as I told you. So if you start telling, okay, I'm gonna talk about a teacher that was really special for me during my, let's say, primary stage, was teaching me English, and then you start talking about that teacher, was pretty punctual, always on time, and I got inspired knowing that teacher. Then in case, let's imagine that you started talking, then you got stuck, not able to give more details. So at that moment, what I have to do, simply digress, please never stop talking. It's so simply fine for you here to give a related point. You're not supposed to talk only about a teacher and that's it. No, talk about a related point. Maybe you can add future, something related to a future, like maybe teaching in the future in general. I think in the future, I don't think that the teacher will play that role in the future. Maybe the computer will replace the teacher one day, I believe. Maybe you can add something related to that. Or recommendation. Maybe do you recommend having a teacher or not? Advantages and disadvantages in general about having a teacher, maybe. Not about the teacher that you were talking about, in general. Do you think having a teacher is advantageous or what? Maybe you can tell about getting some guidance, letting you know about your weaknesses, strengths to work on, and like that. And you add some disadvantages. Maybe you become a little bit lazy, right? Depending on your teacher, maybe to give you the info, so you may forget the information faster. They always tell that when you are not the one who has searched for the info, so you may forget. Or comparison, if you wish to compare, like telling in the past teachers maybe were respected more compared to these days. Maybe you can tell that we find these days a lot of conflicts at schools. Usually, especially children these days are not that much respecting their teacher. So you see, you started talking about a teacher, then ending up talking about teaching in general, and nobody can blame you. It's okay here. Speaking is not like writing, guys. In IELTS, in writing, if you go off topic a little, so you simply get penalized largely. You have to stay focused. But for here in speaking, you're not being evaluated on how many pieces of info, let's say, you have related to your teacher. No, the examiner is just simply asking you for you to speak out. The examiner is in need of listening to you, telling or letting you talk, speak until the examiner does decide your score, right? That's the issue. So remember that rule, please. And for sure, use gap fillers. We often use such gap fillers and we often need such gap fillers while talking, right? Adding words like actually, as a matter of fact, generally speaking, well, like that. You add some fillers. So the last point that I need to talk about today is like how the examiner does decide your score. The examiner, guys, checks only 4 criteria, or depends on 4 criteria to decide your score. That's it. Depends on your fluency. That's number 1. That stands for 25% of your score. Checks you're able to give a long response or you're giving just a 1-word response. You are hesitant or you're able to expand your answer confidently without hesitation, without having many pauses in between. For sure, occasional hesitation is okay. It happens sometimes, but hesitation out of maybe searching for an idea to tell, not hesitation for searching for a word to tell or to maybe correct your grammatical errors, right? Even correcting is possible, correcting yourself is possible, but once slips of the tongue for sure do exist. Even native speakers do have some slips of the tongue, but not a lot, right? Just 1, 2. Linking words while talking, you need to add and, but, so. And then the examiner does check number 2, which is your vocab, your lexical resource, your vocabulary. You are using simply less common words, like you're not repeating the easy words like good, bad, or such words that are there always. How to replace good? That's a good one. Maybe you can tell what do you think? Effective, maybe you can tell. It depends on the topic, honestly. Beneficial, being important, being significant. Lots of replacements rather than telling the word good, which is so common, right? And as long as you are able to express your ideas and convey meaning, and you talk about the topic with a range of vocabulary, you're able to talk about movies, let's say, easily, then this means that your vocab is pretty fine. Then after this, number 3, the examiner does check your grammar for sure. Both your accuracy and the range. Accuracy means how correct your grammar is. You need to have accurate grammar, right? Without mistakes, I mean. And at the same moment, you need to show a wide range of grammar. Range means like a variety. You're using complex sentences, using and, but, although. You link between your ideas, so you have more complex sentences. When, while, if, right? Many connectors to link and to add a variety to your response. Complex sentences, more than one tense even. And then lastly, checks your pronunciation, which is again also 25%. Need to pronounce correctly with whatever accent is. Your accent is Egyptian, then never worry, okay? Because we have this worrying feeling of being an Egyptian, so I may get a lower score. No, guys, no problem to have an Egyptian accent, an American one, and a British one, or whatever your accent is. Feel free. As long as your pronunciation is correct, you pronounce words properly, then no problem. It's okay, right? And at the same moment, use variations, as I told you earlier. Don't try to have the same tone, that robotic tone of showing that you have memorized answers, as I told you. So just show variation by stressing a word, maybe, or by lowering another word, or stressing a word to show meaning of that word. Like, show some variations, guys. Okay, so that's all. These are all the 4 criteria the examiner does check to decide your score. And these are the tips and tricks. So now, guys, I need to hear your questions if you have any. But just give me only a second. I'll be back. Okay, just a second.
Okay, dears. When Miss Sarah came back, inshallah, I'm going to cut this meeting and rejoin again. Would you please rejoin again if you have any questions? Because we are going to lose the connection, because the free session is going to end just in 30 seconds. So would you please make sure to rejoin us again, inshallah. Okay, Mrs. Sarah, would you please?
Oh,
I'm
yes.
going. The free session is going to end in 30 seconds. So we are going to rejoin again to receive the questions from the audience.
Okay, good idea.
Okay, I'm going to end the meeting now, and we are going to rejoin again in 1 minute.
Okay, 1 minute, guys. We will be back.
Sure.
Thank you.